Hola amigos, this is level 12 and today we are back with our 5th installment of WW1 Hetalia edition. Today's episode is called Shackled to a Corpse. We will discuss the war on the Eastern Front, Italy's involvement, and Serbia's demise. I'm likely going to leave out some of the internal strife the German command was having at this time, but just understand certain officers did not like each other. So something very interesting is that Germany and Russia had been fighting each other for centuries, and the war on the Eastern Front quickly took on a patriotic and mythological approach from both sides. Instead of Russia fighting Germany, it was Slav versus the Teutons. Very grandiose, just to spark some national pride and boost morale. So Russia first attacked East Prussia, a part of Germany, and according to the Germans, it was a vicious battle. The Russian army looted and destroyed and killed people in the parts of East Prussia that they infiltrated. Refugees that later went back to Germany told stories of Russian barbarism that helped paint a certain image of the Russians. Stories like this would make the Russian front seem extremely formidable during World War II. However, a lot of this was blown out of proportion during wartime for propaganda purposes. In the beginning, the Germans were not very well equipped to handle the Russian army. Not only were they outgunned and outmanned, but the geography also encouraged both sides to play the war defensively. Because there would be highly contentious battles, weaker officers were replaced with older, bolder generals such as 67-year-old Hindenburg and his chief of staff Ludendorff. Together, their plan was to stop the Russian armies led by Rennenkampf and Samsonov. Something very quickly to say about Samsonov and Rennenkampf, which will make the following battle easier to understand. They did not like each other. In fact, they hated each other so much they refused to communicate with one another. So while Samsonov was plunging deeper into the Germans' trap, he had no idea where Rennenkampf, his flank, was. What followed next was the Battle of Tannenberg, where Teutonic and Slavic differences were settled. Kind of. Basically, Germany slowly moved troops to where Samsonov and his army was, taking advantage of Russia's confusion in the woods. On August 29th, Samsonov was so overwhelmed by the Germans, he went into the woods and shot himself. By the 31st, Germany had 91,000 Russian prisoners, 500 guns, and 50,000 Russians were dead or wounded. After this battle, the new plan was to envelop certain parts of Russia, such as Prenzl, because the Eastern Front was much bigger and allowed for more maneuverable attacks. However, this idea was not favored by a young officer named Falkenhayn who wanted to make a separate peace with Russia, like he didn't want to go to battle with them. Talk like this was pretty much betrayal, however, but Russia would never go for such a plan because of its alliances to Britain and France. In March of 1915, Falkenhayn gave in to Hindenburg and Ludendorff's ideas, yet they had differences even here. Hindenburg and Ludendorff both wanted to envelop northern Russia and take over places such as the Baltic states. Falkenhayn, on the other hand, wanted to deal with Serbia and involve Austria-Hungary. He was actually able to make an Austro-German army and appointed a man named August von Mackensen to be in charge of it. People did not like this move. Falkenhayn's big plan was just to bombard Russia with artillery and push forth into the country. It began its attacks on May 2nd, 1915, and by June 3rd they had captured Premysl and later Limburg. Also, just because I don't know where else to mention it, here was also the first use of poisonous gas during World War I. I think they had tear gas, and the Russians that found these soldiers affected by the gas were very confused. Hindenburg continued his plan in the north and quickly took over the Baltic states. On August 5th, he took Warsaw and later captured Grodno and Vilna on September 19th. So by now, the Russian army had lost 1.4 million soldiers since May and was not doing great. Just for some background, Russia had a lot of internal struggle for many different reasons. One of the main ones being it wasn't fully industrialized. It was in the middle of doing that when the war started, so most of the country was still very rural and very full of peasants. Also, Tsar Nicholas II was a horrible ruler. He was quite literal trash, and I could go on for hours about him. He was very weak-willed and very mild-mannered. He was also 5'6", and I am 5'6". He was nothing in comparison to the Tsar before him, not to mention the fact that his wife was a German princess and his only son was a hemophiliac. All these things really weakened Russia internally and made it easy for the Germans to quickly overwhelm the nation. All these factors led to the Great Retreat, where Russians literally retreated. Along the way, they were told to destroy and expel the enemy nations within, which included places such as Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, Poland, and Ukraine. Germany eventually took over these places and attempted to modernize and Germanize them with varying degrees of success. Like, some places experienced horrible famines and others actually got modernized. It's a gambit. On August 21st, 1915, Tsar Nicholas II took over control of the Russian army, which was a horrible decision. However, in the following months, Russia was able to improve its shell production, gun production, and manpower, enabling it to attempt similar envelopment techniques that the Germans had used. Now, let's move on to Italy's involvement. Prior to the war, Italy was actually a member of the Triple Alliance with Germany. However, it claimed that because Austria was extremely aggressive, it stayed neutral. Though the war continued, Italy was looking for an ally who would offer it the most, land. Germany forced Austria-Hungary to offer certain borderlands to Italy that had long been disputed, such as Trentino. However, the Entente offered the Dalmatian coastline, something Austria-Hungary couldn't. Also, the current leader of Italy, Salandra, believed that joining the Entente would promote things such as nationalism and liberalism, which the newly unified Italy really needed. So on April 26, 1915, it signed itself over to the Entente and declared war on Austria-Hungary on May 23rd. But my book specifically pointed out it didn't declare war on Germany, so I guess that's an important point to think of. However, Italy was not equipped to go to war in any sense of the word. First, it was already fighting a conflict in Libya, so manpower was already split. Second, it was also not very industrialized. Living in the north and south of Italy were two completely different spheres of the country. Third, the border between Italy and Austria-Hungary was practically just mountains. So much of it was just mountains with extremely high peaks and a lot of snow. I'm talking a lot of snow. So basically, Italy's job was to stop the Austrians from entering this place called the Venetian Plains. However, both armies fought in the mountains, so they dug into the sides of the mountains and tried to blow up the enemy from underneath. From what I understand, this was a fruitless venture on both sides, and Italy lost 54,000 men. They fought in the mountains, so bombs and stuff caused avalanches. It was a mess. Buffoonery. The final topic for today's video is the defeat of Serbia. Finally, right? The entire war kind of started because of Serbia. This starts with where the loyalties of Bulgaria and Romania lie. Both countries started out neutral, but were willing to go to the highest bidder. I think Germany originally reached out to Romania, but the Queen, who was related to someone in England, reached out to her cousins in England for support. Again, everyone here was related. After agreeing to some kind of land grant, Romania became part of the Entente. The Entente also tried to get Bulgaria, but Bulgaria wanted Serbia and Macedonia, which the Entente couldn't grant because that would be intruding on Serbia's land claims. Whatever. Germany could, however, offer this, and it did. Yet Bulgaria only agreed if the attacks against Serbia were orchestrated under German command, not Austrian, because, Austria didn't really do too well over Serbia. And that the Central Powers attacked from the north. An agreement was signed on September 6, 1915. Originally, many members of the Triple Alliance wanted to continue fighting Russia and worry about Serbia later, but Falkenhayn convinced them otherwise. His reasonings were: 1. Defeating Serbia would remove Russia's foothold in the Balkans. Defeating Serbia would allow for an overland route from Berlin to Constantinople, which they had wanted, the Battle of Gallipoli was still happening at this time. It would fully make a warm water route for Russia impossible, which would also, just help. With oncoming winter, fighting with Russia would be bad, because as we all know, we do not fight Russia in the winter. The first attacks began on the 7th of October, and by the 9th, Belgrade had once again fallen to the Austrians. Serbia attempted a counterattack, but Bulgaria attacked their flank on the 14th. They had two means of retreat, but neither were very good options. Not to mention, soldiers retreated with pretty much their entire families and worldly possessions, making, moving kind of hard to do. The weather was terrible on this journey, and the army did all they could just to survive. 140,000 men made it to the Entente sea vessels and escaped, but the army started with 420,000. Yeah, Britain and France tried to help but arrived too late. In Serbia's defeat, Germany got pretty much everything it had wanted. Just something really quick to mention. Germany and Austria-Hungary were not on the best of terms at this point. At the start of the war, they may have been close, but the continuation of it only deteriorated what little relationship they had built up. Many people, including the guy named Conrad that we talked about in the first episode, considered Austria-Hungary the secret enemy. Let me just say, this really screws over the Triple Alliance later. So that's it for this episode. I really hope you liked it. I know it's kind of short, and I think I went a little fast. I actually had to re-record this because I went way too fast the first time. Next week's episode will be on Verdun, which means we're getting really close to the end of this war, because from what I remember, Verdun was a big turning point in the war. Anyways, I really hope you guys like it. Please tune in next week for the Battle of Verdun. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe for more random fandom things. Ciao, chicos.